Hi guys, and welcome to Calm Night Radio Channel. Tonight we step into the blue dark of 1775 where a woman is already awake before the rooster bothers to clear his throat, before the fire has fully caught, before the grand words of liberty have travelled far enough to warm her hands. You enter a world that smells of ash, damp wood, and cold earth, where the day begins not with choice but with duty, and where black women carry whole households, fields, and futures on tired shoulders. What does morning feel like when almost every hour belongs to someone else? What secret skills do you learn when survival depends on reading moods, weather, hunger, and danger before the sun even rises? So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, and while you are here, comment with your location and local time. Now, dim the lights, and let the first sound be breathing in the dark. You lie on rough bedding stuffed with straw, corn husks, or whatever can be spared. The fabric beneath your fingers feels coarse. It scratches the wrist and catches against dry skin. Cold lingers close to the floor, in many places, whether you sleep in a plantation quarter, a small cabin near a townhouse, a garret room, or a narrow loft above a workspace. The air before dawn has a damp bite to it. It slides through cracks in planks. It settles in the joints. It asks nothing polite. You do not wake slowly. That would be nice. But 1775 is not generous with softness, especially for black women whose labour holds together the daily life of farms, port cities, taverns, kitchens, nurseries, dairies, washyards, and workshops. In the British colonies that will soon call themselves the United States, black women live under many conditions. Some are enslaved in tobacco regions, rice country, seaports, small farms, or northern towns. Some are free, though freedom is often thin, watched and unstable. Some hire out labour, some sell food, mend cloth, nurse children, or carry water. Some know several languages. Some were born in Africa, some in the colonies, and many move through a world that keeps trying to reduce them to a single role, which is rather lazy of the world. The morning starts with listening. You listen for the rustle of another sleeper rising. You listen for an infant. You listen for footsteps outside. You listen for a mistress calling from an upper room, or an overseer moving across frozen ground. You listen for weather too, because weather is a supervisor no one can ignore. Rain means mud, smoke, soaked hems, heavier carrying. Wind means the fire will be stubborn. Summer means flays, sweat, and air so thick it almost sits on your shoulders. Winter means numb fingers, stiff cloth, and the dangerous temptation to move more slowly than the day demands. Light enters grudgingly. A grey line forms at the door frame or the window gap. Ash in the hearth stirs back to life when coaxed. The smell of smoke grows sharper. You kneel near the fire and feel the first warmth touch your face, while your back stays cold. This is one of the odd little truths of the era. Comfort arrives in pieces. A warm cheek, a less icy floorboard, a crust saved from yesterday. A moment when no one is shouting. Much of daily life for black women in 1775 begins with fire and water. Fires must be kept, rekindled, or built. Water must be fetched, often hauled in buckets that bite into the hands with their handles. In urban households, you may cross a yard in dim light, skirts brushing against dew. In the countryside, you may walk farther, hearing insects, frogs, or the soft complaint of a pump. The bucket grows heavier halfway back, which seems unfair, though gravity has never had much sympathy. You learn balance early. You learn how to carry without spilling. You learn how to move through cramped spaces without waking a child or drawing a rebuke. You learn how to judge whether there is enough meal left, enough wood stacked, enough soap boiled down, enough time before the household expects breakfast. Time itself feels owned. Bells, voices, and habits divide it before you can claim any piece of it for yourself. In many households, black women prepare food before sunrise. That does not mean a grand breakfast appears on every table. Far from it. Diet depends on region, season, status, and access. Cornmeal is common, porridge, mush, coarse bread, and small portions of salt pork or fish may appear. In some areas, rice is central. In others, wheat is scarce and precious. Milk may be available if dairying is part of the work. Molasses sweetens where sugar is too dear, for enslaved women. Rations are often controlled and never abundant enough to make life easy. Hunger is a steady tutor. It teaches thrift, watching, saving, stretching. It teaches the value of a hidden sweet potato or a handful of greens grown in a spare patch of ground. Food has politics, not the grand speech kind, the real kind. Who eats first? Who eats well? Who gets leftovers? Who goes without? Black women often stand at the centre of that silent arithmetic. They cook, serve, carry, nurse, scrub, and somehow are expected to make scarcity look orderly. In wealthy homes, the table can be polished and elegant upstairs while the labour below stairs is smoky, frantic, and exhausting. That split tells you a great deal about 1775. Beauty often rests on someone else's tired feet. Clothing comes next, if you can call it clothing in the romantic sense. For many black women, garments are practical, worn, patched, and repeatedly altered. Coarse linen, wool, homespun, and rough shoes if shoes are available. Head wraps, aprons, petticoats, jackets, shifts. Fabric has texture you never forget. Stiff when new, heavy when wet, irritating when dirty. Some women receive issued clothing once or twice a year if enslaved, and those supplies can be poor in quality. Some free black women in towns take pride in neat dress when they can manage it, because appearance can signal dignity, skill, and self-possession in a society eager to deny all three. Historians still argue about the exact degree of choice black women had in daily dress across different colonies and households, because records tend to describe them from the outside. Inventories list cloth and garments. Runaway advertisements describe bodies and clothing in unnervingly careful detail. Letters mention servants or enslaved women in passing, but inner life is harder to catch. You can see the petticoat in the archive. You have to imagine the feeling of tying it in the dark with cold fingers. And still, personality slips through. A brighter kerchief, a careful fold, a stitch done neatly for the satisfaction of neatness itself, a bead kept from an older world. In some communities, women preserve African knowledge in hair care, food preparation, healing, names, music, and gesture. Even under intense pressure to conform to colonial expectations, in the Low Country, where rice plantations hold large enslaved populations, African influences remain especially strong in language and culture. In northern cities, too, black women shape neighbourhoods with work, worship, kinship, and practical intelligence, though the written record often notices them only when someone white wants something from them. You step outside and the world is still blue. The yard smells of wet dirt, dung, smoke, and leaves. Somewhere an animal shifts in its stall. Somewhere a baby fusses. Somewhere a cartwheel complains. Dawn in 1775 is not picturesque in the easy painting sense. It is active. It hums with obligation. In seaport towns like Boston, Newport, New York, Charleston, or Philadelphia, black women may rise amid creaking docks, fish brine, tar, and the slap of water against wood. On farms and plantations, the morning carries bird calls, frost, or the drone of insects depending on season and latitude. Every region has its own soundtrack. Everyone begins too early. For many women, the household is already full before the sun is visible. Children must be fed or quieted. Laundry may need soaking. Floors need sweeping. Dairy work, spinning, weaving, poultry tending, gardening, brewing, candle making, soap making, or nursing may all wait within the same day. One mainstream historical fact often gets overlooked because it sounds ordinary. Black women's labour was not confined to one sphere. They worked in fields and homes, in skilled and unskilled tasks, in visible service and invisible maintenance. Their versatility was not a charming trait. It was demanded. No one says thank you. At least not often. A quirky detail slips in here from the world of material culture. Some households in the 18th century used bed warmers, shallow pans on long handles filled with coals, to heat sheets before sleep. It sounds luxurious until you imagine who had to manage the coals, prevent sparks, and move through cold rooms with a hot metal pan before anyone else settled comfortably into bed. Many conveniences of the age had a hidden operator. Very often. That operator was a woman. Very often. A black woman. The body keeps score. Arms strengthen from lifting. Hands roughen from lye soap. Scrubbing boards. Knives, brooms, hose, spinning fibres, and iron pots. Shoulders knot with tension. Feet harden. Pregnancy does not necessarily pause the work. Nursing does not erase the work. Illness rarely cancels the work unless it becomes impossible to stand. Free black women in towns may have slightly greater control over their labour, but they face constant legal restrictions, racial hostility, fragile income, and the danger that one lost position can pull apart the whole arrangement of life. You notice how much of the morning is spent anticipating the needs of others. That may be the deepest rhythm of the day, not simply doing tasks, but doing them before someone else realises they need doing. Fire before the chill becomes a complaint, water before the basin is empty, bread before the hunger sharpens tempers, clean linen before the child is changed. This anticipatory skill is a kind of intelligence, though 18th century society rarely names it with respect. But it is expertise, real expertise. Black women in 1775 are often the first to know who is sick, what stores are low, where the roof leaks, when the cow is restless, which child has a fever, which neighbour may trade onions for soap, which mistress is anxious, which master is angry, and which rumour in town might actually matter. They know the practical map of life. They know where things are hidden, both objects and emotions. That knowledge can protect. It can also burden. The emotional atmosphere of morning matters too. Some days begin in a hush that feels almost merciful. Some begin with fear. Enslaved women may wake with immediate awareness of surveillance, punishment, or forced separation from loved ones. Free women may wake with the quieter but persistent worry of debt, unstable employment, predatory laws, or harassment. A woman's laughter from the day before does not erase the pressure of the morning. People in the past were not grey figures in prints. They had moods, irritations, jokes, preferences, and private annoyances. Someone, somewhere, in 1775, absolutely rolled her eyes while tying on an apron. You can almost hear it. By first light, the household or quarter is fully stirring. Voices rise, pots knock, doors open. Smoke climbs into a pale sky. The day has not yet revealed its worst strain, but it has already demanded muscle, memory, patience, and careful attention. This is daily life at its threshold. Not heroic in the polished monument sense. More impressive than that. Repeated, skilled, underestimated, and absolutely essential. As you stand in that thin hour between darkness and daylight, you feel how the world depends on work few people bother to name. You smell ash in your hair and dampness in the boards beneath your feet. You feel the pull of the bucket handle still in your palm. You hear someone calling from inside. Morning has arrived, and with it the long ledger of tasks that will fill every corner of the day. Once the first light has settled over the yard, the pace changes from quiet preparation to visible labour. The day is fully awake now, and you are expected to be awake with it. This is the hour when work leaves the shadows and shows its full size. What seemed manageable in the dark suddenly becomes a long chain of duties, each one attached to another like links in an iron line. You move quickly because slowness attracts notice. In 1775, black women's labour often stretches across several worlds at once. One woman may scrub kettles, carry water, cook, mend clothing, tend a child, feed chickens, and then spend hours in the field. Another may wash linen for a town household, sell small goods in a market lane, and return home to prepare food for her own family. Another may nurse an infant who is not her own, while her own child waits nearby or somewhere else entirely. The work shifts by region, season, and condition. But the pattern remains familiar. A great deal is expected, very little is spared. For enslaved women on plantations and farms, labour is frequently divided between domestic tasks and agricultural work. This division is not neat. Owners and overseers like categories when they keep accounts, but daily life is less tidy than their ledgers. A woman may begin with kitchen work and still be sent out to hoe tobacco, weed corn, plant peas, pull flax, gather fodder, or carry produce. In rice regions, work can be especially punishing. The wet ground, stagnant water, insects, and heat create an exhausting environment. Mud clings to skirts and feet. The air smells green and sour. Mosquitoes sing at your ears as if they own the place. They certainly act like it. In tobacco country, women and men alike may labour in planting, hoeing, cutting, and curing, though specific assignments vary. Tobacco is demanding and fussy. It wants attention at each stage, rather like a spoiled child with leaves. In grain-growing areas, women may bind sheaves, glean after harvest, or manage tasks closer to the house, while still contributing to agricultural production. In small farms, where labour is limited, people do whatever the day requires. Nobody gets the luxury of a single job title. Urban work carries its own weight. In colonial towns, black women often serve in homes, inns, taverns, and workshops. You may cook over smoky hearths in narrow kitchens, carry chamber pots down steep stairs, haul laundry to yards or waterfront spaces, shop for ingredients under careful instruction, or stand for long hours washing pewter, scouring floors, and baking bread. In port cities, the smells gather in layers: saltfish, horse sweat, wet rope, wood smoke, beer, refuse, bread. Human crowding. The street itself feels busy against the skin, full of elbows, wheels, voices, and eyes. Some free black women make a living by taking in laundry, selling produce, nursing the sick, midwifery, sewing, or running small informal businesses. Freedom does not remove the strain of labour. It simply changes the arrangement of who claims the profit and who imposes the rules. A free woman may choose clients, but she also faces the danger of unpaid bills, suspicion from officials, and constant pressure from white employers who expect obedience without actually owning her, which must have felt deeply insulting in its own special way. Washing clothes is one of the clearest examples of how hard ordinary work can be. Linen and wool do not clean themselves through the magic of historical charm. There is hauling, soaking, boiling, scrubbing, rinsing, wringing, lifting, drying, folding, and mending. Water is heavy, wet cloth is heavier, soap can sting split knuckles, steam rises into the face, arms ache by midday, the smell is sharp with lye and damp fabric. You understand very quickly that clean clothing in the 18th century is not a symbol of refinement first. It is a monument to somebody's sore back. Cooking is no lighter. Hearth cooking demands skill, judgment, and speed. Fires burn unevenly, pots blacken, bread can fail, meat spoils. Timing matters when there are no modern clocks ticking beside a stove and no easy way to control heat. A cook reads flame, smoke, smell, and sound. You know when fat is ready by the look of it. You know when porridge is thick enough by the drag of the spoon. You know whether bread is near burning from the faint change in scent before anyone else notices. This is knowledge learned through repetition, burns, observation, and memory. It is also skilled work. Colonial records often reduce black women to labels like cook, washer, servant, wench, or Negro woman, all of them blunt tools pretending to describe human beings. Those terms flatten ability. In reality, many women hold enormous practical knowledge. They preserve food, brew, pickle, stitch, treat fevers, soothe children, spin thread, and manage supplies with an accuracy that keeps entire households functioning. Historians continue to debate how often owners recognize this labor as skilled rather than merely expected, because surviving records are usually written by people who benefited from the work without fully understanding it. There are smaller tasks too, and they fill the edges of the day. You shell peas, you pull feathers, you card wool, you tend candles and you rinse cups, you sweep ashes, you carry messages, you peel roots, you chase off hens from the doorway, you fetch thread, you pick burrs from hems, you rock a cradle with one foot while your hands keep moving elsewhere. Life in 1775 runs on this kind of layered activity. where one task never arrives alone. Children are often near the centre of women's work. Black women care for their own children when they can, but many are also assigned to nurse, carry, wash, or supervise white children. This creates one of the cruelest contradictions of the period. A woman may soothe one child while worrying over another she cannot protect. She may know a white household's babies by their cries, their fevers, their teething habits, while her own child receives only the exhausted remains of her time. The emotional cost of that arrangement is hard to measure, but it sits quietly behind many simple lines in old records. Not all work happens under direct supervision. In some plantation regions, enslaved labourers may be assigned daily tasks to complete, rather than being watched every moment. This can create small pockets of control over pace, though not freedom. In the Low Country, task systems sometimes allow enslaved people limited time after assigned work, but this depended heavily on local custom, season, and the demands of owners. Even where such arrangements existed, the labour itself remained grueling, and the supposed flexibility could vanish the moment someone in power changed his mind. A curious detail from the era appears in household medicine. Women were often expected to prepare remedies using herbs, roots, tallow, vinegar, and spirits. Some of these treatments came from European practice, others from African knowledge, and many from a messy blend of both. A salve might be made in the same space where breakfast is boiled. A tea for fever might be prepared while a floor waits unswept. The line between healer and labourer is thin. Sometimes it is the same person with the same tired hands. Black women also work as spinners and seamstresses, particularly in homes that produce cloth domestically. Spinning requires rhythm. The fibres catch and release under practised fingers. The wheel hums. The room smells of wool, flax, dust, and fire. Sewing is slower, more inward work, though it can still be urgent. Shirts, shifts, caps, aprons, stockings, and petticoats all wear out. Cloth frays, seam split. Children grow. Owners demand repairs. Nothing in the 18th century stays intact without somebody constantly rescuing it. You begin to notice how labour shapes the body's sense of time. Morning does not feel like a fresh beginning in the modern motivational sense. It feels like entering a current already moving. Work has momentum. One delayed task pushes against the next. A broken pail, a sick child, a stubborn fire, a torn hem, a missing ingredient, a sudden order from above. All of it can tilt the entire day. And still, many women create methods of efficiency that never appear in formal records. They group tasks. They save steps. They trade favours. They hide small supplies for emergencies. They remember which employers are least likely to inspect a basket closely. They teach girls by demonstration rather than speech because speech takes time and draws attention. Intelligence in this world is often practical, quiet, and fast. There is no clear border between paid labour, forced labour, and family survival. A free woman selling pies or vegetables may do so to cover rent, buy fuel, or clothe her children. An enslaved woman tending a garden plot after required labour may use it to supplement rations. In some places, women sell eggs, greens, berries, or crafted items in local markets with permission, or in arrangements that hover uncertainly between allowed and tolerated. The coins earned can be precious, so can the information exchanged while selling. Market spaces matter because work there is social as well as economic. News travels in murmurs, prices rise and fall, names are remembered, disputes flare, alliances form. A woman known for good cakes, clean linen, sharp remedies, or reliable nursing can build a small reputation even in a hostile society. Reputation is a kind of currency. Fragile. Yes, still valuable. Scholars remain divided on exactly how much mobility black women in towns could exercise from day to day, because the answer varies so widely. Some moved through streets with relative routine due to their employer's needs or their own business. Others faced constant questioning, curfews, passes, or harassment. Local law and custom mattered a great deal. So did skin tone, status, dress, language, and whether one belonged visibly to a household. Freedom on paper, and freedom in practice were not always close acquaintances. By midday, the senses are thick with work. Smoke clings to fabric, sweat cools and returns, hands smell of onions, soap, wool, iron, or earth depending on the task. Sun presses against the neck, the back tightens, the apron grows heavier, hunger arrives, but food may be brief and plain. A crust, a spoon of mush, a bit of salted meat, a piece of cold bread. You eat quickly when you can. Leisure is not part of the meal, yet labour is not only punishment. It can also be a site of memory, pride, and shared knowledge. A woman who bakes well knows it. A woman who can set a broken room back into order in an hour knows it. A woman who delivers a healthy child, spins a fine thread, or coaxes vegetables from poor soil knows what she has done. The world may refuse applause. Skill still exists without applause. This matters because 1775 is full of people writing grand words about industry, virtue, household order, and moral improvement. Much of that language rests on work done by women whose names are missing from polished essays. Black women keep fires going, shirts mended, children alive, fields weeded, tables supplied, and sickness managed. The daily economy rests on their movement. The social world rests on their labour. Even comfort rests on it. As the workday stretches onward, you feel that truth in the wrists, the shoulders, the sore arches of the feet, and the careful pace of breath. Labour is not one event. It is the atmosphere of the day itself. It surrounds you like heat from a hearth or humidity from a marsh. It enters clothing, posture, and thought. By now the sun is higher, the yard noisier, the kitchen hotter, the field brighter. The tasks keep coming. They always do. By the time the day settles into its full rhythm, your body becomes sharply aware of three constant companions: cloth, appetite, and weather. None of them ever quite leave you alone. In 1775, comfort is a rare luxury for black women, whether enslaved or free, rural or urban, young or aging. The world presses itself against the skin through what you wear, what you lack, and what the season decides to do. You feel clothing first. Not in the fashionable sense, not in the bright, rustling, powdered vision painted in portraits. You feel it as weight, scratch, dampness, tightness, and wear. A shift clings where sweat has dried. A petticoat brushes the calves with rough insistence. A jacket pulls at the shoulders during lifting. A kerchief traps heat in summer and barely helps in winter. Fabric is not simply what you put on. It is what follows you through every task, gathering smoke, dust, grease, rain, and the smell of the day. For many enslaved black women, clothing is issued sparingly. The amount varies from place to place, but stinginess is a common habit among those who control supplies. A woman may receive a few coarse garments each year, often made of linen in warm weather and rough wool, or heavy cloth in cold weather. Shoes may come late, fit badly, or not come at all. Children often go half-clothed in summer and poorly protected in winter. Stockings wear through, soles split, hems fray into threads that brush against the ankles like dry grass. Nothing stays new for long. Everything becomes repair. A dress that tears at the side seam must be stitched again. An apron rubbed thin from washing and wiping must be patched. A sleeve burned by a spark from the hearth is trimmed, folded, or saved for a child. Cloth is expensive, and every scrap matters. You save strips for ties, stuffing, bindings, baby wrappings, or mending. A worn garment does not disappear when it's too tired for its first purpose. It simply enters a second life, then a third. Free black women in towns and cities sometimes have more latitude in dress, but not unlimited freedom. A neat cap, clean apron, or well-tied kerchief can project dignity and seriousness. It can also attract judgment. Clothing communicates more than warmth. It signals class, labour, respectability, and risk. In some places, local custom expects black women to remain visibly humble in appearance, while in other places a respectable dress can help secure work or social standing. You may take pride in a carefully washed gown even if the fabric is plain. You may smooth it with your palms before stepping into the street. because even a small act of order can steady the heart. Head coverings deserve their own attention. Kerchiefs, caps, wraps, and cloths are practical, yes, but also expressive. They shield hair from soot and sweat. They hold warmth. They can be tied quickly in the dark. They can mark age, labour, region, or personal taste. In some communities, methods of wrapping and grooming carry hints of African influence, adapted under colonial pressure. Hair itself is personal territory in a world eager to invade every other part of life. To wash, braid, cover, aid, and maintain it is not trivial. It is an assertion that the body still belongs to itself in some inward way. Historians continue to debate how much room black women had for self-expression in clothing across different colonies, because the evidence is uneven and often filtered through white observation. Account books record fabric, estate inventories list garments. Runaway notices describe dresses, jackets, shoes, scarves, headcloths, and earrings with a precision that feels chilling. Those notices prove that appearance mattered. They also reveal something else. People looked hard at black women's bodies, but rarely with tenderness. Cold weather sharpens every problem. Winter in 1775 does not politely remain outdoors. It enters through walls, under doors, and across floors. It waits in the bedding. It stiffens the water bucket. It reddens the knuckles and bites the ears. If you have wool, it can itch mercilessly. If you do not have enough, the cold sits against the skin like a warning. A fire helps, but fires demand wood, and wood demands labour, even near a strong hearth. One side of the body warms while the other stays chilled. It is a half comfort, which was probably the century's favourite kind. Feet suffer badly in winter. Bad shoes rub blisters when wet and harden like boards when dry. Bare feet toughen, but toughness is not insulation. To step onto frozen ground, damp floorboards, or packed earth in thin shoes is to know exactly where the body meets the season. Children suffer most visibly. Their noses run, their hands chap, their toes go pale. Women notice these things and do what they can, wrapping little ones in salvaged cloth, tucking them near heat, rubbing hands, adjusting bedding, and worrying in silence when there is too little to give. Summer is not kinder. Heat presses close in kitchens, fields, wash yards, and narrow urban rooms. Linen clings to the back. Wool becomes absurd. Stagnant water breeds insects. Flies settle on faces and food with equal confidence. Sweat runs down the spine and gathers beneath stays, kerchiefs, and layers that propriety or habit still require. The air can smell of yeast, rotting refuse, warm milk, damp hay, and human effort. In southern regions, fever season brings dread with it. Marshy air feels heavy enough to drink. Mosquitoes descend with tireless ambition. Long sleeves protect the skin, but they trap heat. Shorter dress invites bites, burns, and comment. There is no perfect answer. Rain changes everything again. A dry dress becomes a soaked burden in minutes. Wet wool hangs like a punishment. Mud grips shoes and hems. Smoke from damp firewood curls thickly into the eyes. Laundry refuses to dry. Bedding grows clammy. Skin rubbed by wet seams becomes sore. A woman walking with a basket, bucket, or child through rain feels the whole weather settle into her clothing. It stays there long after the cloud passes. Then there is hunger. Not dramatic starvation every day, though that certainly exists in some moments and places. More often, hunger is steady, managed, and familiar. It lives in the small calculations of the hand and eye. How much meal is left? How much salt meat remains? Whether the greens are ready, whether the potatoes can wait, whether the bread can stretch to evening, whether the children have eaten enough to sleep. For enslaved women, rations are often basic and tightly controlled. Cornmeal forms the foundation in many regions. Salted pork, fish, molasses, peas, rice, or a few vegetables may appear depending on location. The quality is uneven. The quantity is often insufficient. Women make these supplies last through skill, gardening, fishing, bartering, foraging, and saving bits from cooking when possible. A small garden plot can make the difference between bare survival and a little strength. Greens, beans, onions, herbs, squash, and sweet potatoes are not only food, they are breathing room. You become watchful around food. Every crumb matters. A heel of bread wrapped in cloth, a few berries gathered on an errand, a spoonful of dripping saved from a pan, the last onion hanging in the corner. Hunger teaches memory. You remember who has cabbage to trade, whose hens are laying, which patch of ground stays warm longest, which mistress sends leftovers only when she's feeling pious, and which one counts every crust as if bread were gold coin. Cooking under scarcity is its own intelligence. A pot can be stretched with water, grain, roots, and a little fat. Bones can flavour broth longer than seems reasonable. Greens soften into nourishment from almost nothing. Cornmeal changes character depending on how it is mixed, baked, boiled, or fried. In rice country, rice fills the stomach when other things fail. In port towns, fish may be accessible one week and gone the next. Markets shift. Seasons shift. Illness can ruin an appetite just when nourishment is most needed. Pregnancy and nursing intensify hunger in ways the records seldom honour. A woman carrying a child or feeding one with her own body needs more, yet often receives no meaningful relief in labour or diet. You may feel a hollow ache by afternoon and keep moving anyway. You may hand the better portion to a child while telling yourself you're not that hungry. You may eat quickly, standing, without the quiet dignity that people later like to imagine belonged naturally to meals in the past. There is a strangely human detail in all this. People still crave taste, even in hardship. They notice sweetness, spice, warmth, and freshness. A bit of molasses can brighten a morning. A roasted yam can feel luxurious. Greens cooked well can comfort more than a rich dish badly made. A peach in season, a handful of nuts, a spoon of berry preserve, a crust baked properly. These are not trivial pleasures. They are flashes of relief. They remind you that the senses continue to ask for delight even when the world offers little. A quirky but telling fact from the period lies in how often imported tea, sugar, and fine foods symbolise status in colonial households. Yet beneath that display, black women were frequently the ones boiling the kettle, cleaning the cups, sweetening the tray, and doing so while their own meals were coarse and limited. Refinement, once again, sits on top of contradiction. Powdered wigs above, empty stomachs below, very elegant, very embarrassing for the century. Scholars still disagree about the exact nutritional condition of enslaved populations in different regions because evidence varies by season, plantation size, local ecology, and access to supplemental food. Some communities hunted, fished, or gardened enough to blunt the worst shortages. Others suffered much more acutely. Children, the elderly, and pregnant women were especially vulnerable. Bones, teeth, height, and illness all tell part of the story. Daily feeling tells another part, though feeling rarely makes it into official records. Yet you can imagine it clearly enough. The weakness in the knees, the lightness in the head after standing too fast, the irritability that comes from too little nourishment and too much demand, touches everywhere in this world of lacking, the rasp of a patched cuff, the sting of cracked skin washed in cold water, the ache of shoulders under wet cloth, the rough bread in the hand, the comfort of warmth from a mug, bowl, or sleeping child. Black women in 1775 know materials intimately because survival is material. Wool, ash, soap, grease, linen, leather, broth, earth, frost. History is often told through laws and wars, but daily life is made of textures. An atmosphere shapes emotion. A cold room can make tempers sharp. A hot kitchen can turn patience thin. Hunger can sour a voice or deepen a silence. Yet people also joke, tease, swap recipes, compare cloth, admire a neat stitch, or laugh at a ridiculous hat glimpsed in town. Black women are not only enduring bodies in the record, they are observers, critics, makers of taste, quiet judges of quality. Someone knows which household serves weak broth. Someone knows whose wool blankets smell permanently of damp dog. Someone absolutely notices when a mistress pretends frugality while hoarding imported sugar in a locked chest. You feel the day through what covers you and what fails to fill you. The dress rubs at the neck. The stomach tightens and loosens in waves. The season sits heavily on the shoulders. Yet within these pressures, women still create order, repair damage, and carve tiny islands of comfort from scarcity. A tucked shawl, a hidden apple, dry stockings for a child, a pot made richer with herbs, a patch sewn neatly enough to look almost intentional. That is the quiet brilliance of it. Not abundance, arrangement, in a world that offers too little cloth, too little food, and too little shelter from the weather. Black women become experts in making insufficiency livable. Not easy, never easy, but livable, one careful choice at a time. You carry that knowledge in your fingers as surely as in your thoughts. By the close of day, the body remembers every thread, every chill, every mouthful, every gust of wind that found its way indoors. And still the garments are folded, the crumbs are saved, the children are covered, and the fire is coaxed to last a little longer against the dark. As the busiest hours of the day begin to loosen their grip, you become more aware of the place meant to hold your life. Home is the word people like to use, soft and tidy and full of promise. In 1775, for black women, that word can mean shelter, crowding, danger, warmth, memory, or almost nothing at all. It depends on who controls the door, who sleeps beside you, who may enter without warning, and whether the walls protect more than they expose. You step inside and notice space first, or the lack of it. In many rural areas, enslaved women live in cabins or quarters built quickly and cheaply, with practical concern but little comfort. Some are one room, some are divided crudely. Floors may be packed earth or rough boards, the walls are draughty, the roof may leak in stubborn places no one bothers to repair properly, smoke hangs low if the chimney draws badly, bedding takes up more room than seems possible, especially where several people share a small interior, a stool, a chest, a few pegs, an iron pot, perhaps a pallet for children, perhaps not much else. The room holds everything because it has no choice. A small space remembers every season. In winter it stores cold, in summer it stores heat, in rain. Dampness settles into wood and cloth until the whole room smells of wet wool, old smoke, and earth. In fair weather, a doorway left open can bring fresh air and with it the sounds of voices, chickens, wheels, dogs, and distant work. But privacy is thin. Sound travels, light travels, authority travels fastest of all. For black women living in urban households, the sleeping space may be a garret, attic corner, kitchen loft, back room, cellar chamber, or narrow bed near the family they serve. Sometimes the arrangement is close enough that even breathing feels supervised. You lie down, but not far from bells, footsteps, and commands. The household does not disappear when you close your eyes. It waits above you, beside you, and often inside your sleep. Free black women may rent rooms, share houses, or live in modest dwellings with family, lodgers, or fellow workers. Even then, security is uncertain, rent must be paid, employers can dismiss, illness can strip away savings in days. A room of your own is precious, but not necessarily stable. One unpaid debt, one complaint from a neighbour, one rise in prices, and the ground shifts again. Home exists, but it does not always sit firmly. That uncertainty shapes the atmosphere of daily life more than furniture ever could. A white family may decorate a room to signal comfort. A black woman is often occupied with the more urgent question of whether comfort can survive interruption. Can you leave a small belonging where you placed it? Can you keep food from being taken? Can you trust the latch? Can you sleep deeply enough to dream? These are not grand philosophical concerns. They are domestic facts. The objects in a room matter because there are usually so few of them. A blanket, a chest, a bowl, a spoon, a Bible, if one is present, a cloth bundle of treasured items, a rag doll for a child, a gourd, a knife, a stool with one repaired leg. Each object earns its place through use. Decoration exists, but quietly. A shell on a shelf, a bit of ribbon saved, a polished button, a scrap of brighter cloth, a plant near a doorway, a gourd hung neatly, These touches are not frivolous. They are evidence of intention. You make a room human by arrangement. That takes care. That takes feeling. The bed itself is rarely the dreamy cloud later costume dramas like to imply. Bedding may be made from straw, corn husks, wool, or rags packed into ticking. It shifts under the body, it flattens, it must be aired, beaten, repaired, protected from damp, bugs, and mice, sheets, if present, may be coarse and few, blankets smell of smoke, sweat, and weather. Yet at the end of a long day, even rough bedding can feel like mercy simply because it promises horizontal existence. Sometimes that is enough. Crowding changes everything. Several children may sleep close beside adults. Relatives, unrelated workers, or hired lodgers may share one room. Bodies generate warmth, but they also bring noise, restlessness, coughing, kicking, and the constant negotiation of limited space. A baby wakes, someone turns over, someone snores, someone mutters in sleep, someone returns late from a task, someone leaves before dawn. Rest is not an isolated act. It is communal, fragile, and often interrupted. For enslaved women, one of the harshest realities is that the dwelling may feel personal without being protected as personal. Owners can reassign rooms, separate families, inspect quarters, or remove people with little warning. The structure where you sleep may hold your labour, your children, your memories, your hidden keepsakes, and your private grief, yet none of that guarantees control. Home can be deeply felt and deeply insecure at the same time. That contradiction sits at the centre of black domestic life under slavery. Historians continue to debate how much autonomy enslaved people had in shaping their living spaces, because the answer varies widely by region, plantation size, owner practice, and material evidence. Archaeology shows signs of adaptation and care in many places. People repaired walls, improved hearths, arranged furniture, planted herbs nearby, collected ceramics, and used personal objects in meaningful ways. But the written record often focuses more on buildings as property than on rooms as lived experience. The archive notices the cabin. It rarely records the feeling of stepping into it after a day of work. Still, feeling survives in traces. You can sense it in order. You can sense it in repair. A swept threshold tells a story. So does a patched blanket folded carefully. So does a pot hung where it can be reached in darkness. Domestic skill includes how to make a cramped room function, where to keep dry wood, where to hide a crust from rats, where to store a spare cloth away from damp, where a child can sleep warmest, where private conversation may be possible, at least for a moment. These are tiny geographies, but they matter intensely. Smell is one of the strongest parts of home in 1775. Smoke is almost always present in some degree. So are cooking odours, wool, wet shoes, stale straw, milk, soap, and human closeness. In a well-kept room, these smells mix into something familiar and grounding. In a neglected or overcrowded one, they turn sour. Women spend endless labour fighting that slide into disorder. Airing bedding, sweeping corners, washing bowls, shaking cloth, scraping pots, controlling ashes, keeping vermin back as best they can. Cleanliness is never effortless. It is wrestled into existence. Touch tells its own truth. Rough boards under bare feet. A warm cup in cold hands. The smooth edge of a well-used spoon. A blanket with one thin spot you always notice. The dry crumble of straw when bedding needs fresh stuffing. A wall cool to the palm in the evening. A child's cheek hot with fever. Home is made of these contacts more than of architecture. The body knows where it is long before words do. A quirky detail from 18th century domestic life lies in the problem of light. Candles are useful, yes, but expensive in labour or money. Tallow candles can smell sharp and animal when they burn. Dipped candles soften in heat, sputter in draughts, and disappear surprisingly fast. A room at night is often dim in ways modern people would find startling. Shadows pool in corners, faces appear and fade with the flame. Sewing by candlelight strains the eyes. Reading, where possible, becomes intimate and slow. Darkness is not an event, it is the default. That darkness can shelter conversation. It can also shelter worry. The emotional life of the home is as important as its physical shape. Black women create calm where they can, sometimes with voice alone, a humming tune while folding cloth, a quiet joke to ease tension, a story told to children near the fire, a warning spoken softly once a visitor leaves, a prayer murmured at the edge of sleep. Domestic life is not silent submission. It is full of interpretation, adjustment, and care. Women read a room quickly. They know when to soothe, when to hush, when to distract, when to send children outdoors, when to save difficult talk for later. Some homes hold several generations. Grandmother, mother, daughter, and younger children may share tasks and knowledge. The older woman knows how to settle a cough, mend a torn cuff so it lasts, or judge a storm by the air. The younger woman has stronger arms, quicker steps, and perhaps a sharper ear for street news. Children learn by watching constantly. They know where the water is kept, which board creaks, how to bank a fire, how to fold cloth small, how to carry less than a full bucket until they are strong enough for more. Domestic knowledge passes hand to hand. In other cases, separation has cut the household thin. A woman may live without a husband, without her mother, without a sister who once shared tasks, without a child sent away or sold. Then the room holds absences as clearly as objects: a missing bowl, an empty sleeping place, a garment kept longer than useful because it belonged to someone gone. Loss has household form, it sits in corners, it changes the sound of evening. Even among free black communities, housing can remain precarious because law and custom press inward. White neighbours may complain, officials may inspect, property rights may be uncertain, employment can dictate location. A woman may choose a room because it is near work, near kin, near water, near church, or simply because it is what can be had. Practicality governs tenderness. You learn to love a place without trusting it completely. Windows, where there are windows, matter more than they seem. They admit air, light, rumour, and observation. Through them you see weather coming. You hear footsteps before the knock. You watch children. You catch fragments of other lives. A window can make a room feel open or exposed depending on who is outside. Curtains, shutters, cloth coverings, all become tools of mood and protection. Scholars still differ on how much emotional refuge home could offer under conditions of slavery, and the answer is almost certainly uneven. For some women, the dwelling was the nearest thing to self-directed space available. For others, it remained too penetrated by fear to feel safe. Most likely it was both at different moments. A room could hold affection at dusk and dread by morning. It could shelter a lullaby one night, and witness forced separation another. Domestic life is not one mood. It is many moods packed tightly together. You begin to understand that privacy in 1775 is not merely being alone. It is the chance to have thoughts, words, gestures, or belongings that are not immediately claimed by someone else. For black women, that privacy is limited, improvised, and fiercely valued. A minute with no questions, a whispered conversation by the door, a chance to comb hair in peace, a hidden scrap of writing or keepsake, a child asleep at last. These moments are small, but they are not minor. They may be the whole centre. That is why home, even uncertain home, matters so deeply. It is where labour returns to feeling, where the face can soften, where shoes come off, where grief can show itself or be hidden, where laughter can rise unexpectedly over very little, where food is stretched, injuries inspected, stories traded, and children gathered close against chill, fear, and fatigue. The room may be poor, it may be crowded, it may be borrowed from fortune and never guaranteed. Yet, inside it, black women still shape atmosphere with astonishing skill. By evening, the walls hold the breath of the day, smoke drifts upward, cloth hangs to dry, a bowl waits near the hearth, someone shifts on bedding, someone hums very quietly. The room is imperfect in every practical sense. Still, it contains intention, and intention is powerful. You cannot always choose the structure. You can still choose how to order what remains within it in 1775. The quiet domestic art is one of the ways black women defend their humanity from a world determined to crowd it out. As evening thoughts gather around the heart, you begin to see that the most precious parts of life in 1775 are often the least secure. A bowl can be replaced, a shoe can be patched, a roof can be mended badly and still stand, but family is more delicate. Love is not delicate in itself. It is stubborn, practical, and often very funny. Yet the conditions around it are fragile. For black women, especially the enslaved, kinship lives under constant pressure from sale, distance, illness, law, and the blunt convenience of other people's decisions. You learn to love with alertness. That is exhausting. It is also ordinary. A mother wakes with one ear tuned to her child even while tending another household's demands. A sister notices who looks thinner than usual. A grandmother remembers a song, a remedy, a name, a birthplace, a line of relation that official records do not care to keep straight. A wife measures the day by whether her husband returns before dark. A friend brings gossip that is really warning disguised as conversation. These ties are emotional. Yes, but they are also practical structures of survival. Affection keeps people going. Information keeps them safer. Motherhood stands close to the center of this world. Black women bear children under conditions ranging from precarious freedom to outright captivity. Pregnancy does not stop labor for long, if at all. A woman may carry water, tend fires, hoe rows, wash clothes, and nurse older children while carrying another life within her. The body works and creates at the same time. It is a remarkable thing, though 1775 rarely bothers to admire it properly. Birth itself is dangerous in every community of the era, but the danger is sharper when nourishment is poor, rest is limited, and medical care is uneven or intrusive. Women rely heavily on each other. Experienced mothers, elder women, and midwives often guide labour, soothe fear, prepare cloths, heat water, and watch for trouble. The room smells of sweat, herbs, straw, and effort. The sounds can be quiet or fierce. A hand to hold matters. A familiar voice matters. A woman in labour is never only bringing forth a child. She is also testing the strength of the network around her. Black midwives hold important knowledge in many communities. They understand positioning, herbs, bleeding, fever, recovery, and the mysterious timing of the body. Some are respected across racial lines because skill can force recognition where humanity does not. White families may call on black women's knowledge while still denying them equal standing. That contradiction appears often in daily life. Need creates temporary respect. Power quickly snatches it back. Historians still debate how extensive black women's authority in childbirth and healing was in different regions, because evidence survives unevenly and is often filtered through white observers. Some records praise a capable midwife without preserving her own voice. Others mention women only when outcomes go badly, yet the pattern is clear enough. Women learned from women. Knowledge travelled through touch, observation, memory, and repetition, often outside formal institutions. Children fill the home with motion and anxiety. They trail after older siblings, cry from hunger, fall asleep in odd positions, play with scraps, ask questions, and learn too quickly what danger sounds like. Black mothers and caregivers teach practical caution early. Do not go there. Do not say that. Stay near. Listen. Carry this. Mind the fire. Watch the road. Childhood exists, of course, but innocence is fragile when the world can intrude so abruptly. Even games may imitate work because work is what children see all day. A little broom, a rag bundle treated like a baby, pebbles counted as market goods. Pretend has very little distance from reality, and still there is tenderness. Plenty of it. A child's hair is braided carefully. A lullaby softens the room. A joke makes someone snort with laughter while trying not to. A crust is broken and shared. A tired woman strokes a forehead with 2 fingers while her own eyes close. These gestures matter because they affirm relationship where the broader society denies full personhood. To love well under those conditions is a quiet act of resistance. though the people doing it may simply call it getting through the day. For enslaved families, the threat of separation is constant, even when no sale is currently planned. That threat lives in the air. An owner may decide to settle a debt, reward an heir, punish disobedience, or reorganize labor. A child can be hired out. A husband can be sent elsewhere. A mother can be sold away from infants and older children alike. The uncertainty changes how people attach and how they prepare. You hold someone close and know the world may still take them. That knowledge does not weaken love, it often makes it fiercer. Marriage among enslaved people is especially complicated. Deep partnerships form, and communities recognize them. Yet the law offers little protection. Some couples live together, others live on separate properties and steal time when they can. A man may walk miles at night to see his wife, carrying the dust of the road on his shoes and the risk of punishment in his steps. Women wait, worry, and calculate whether the visit is worth the danger. Usually it is. Human beings have always been embarrassingly committed to each other in defiance of convenience. A quirky but telling detail of the era lies in naming. Names can hold memory, aspiration, religion, family links, or owner preference, all tangled together. A child might carry the name of a parent, a grandparent, a biblical figure, an African echo transformed by colonial ears, or a name imposed from above. Within black communities, names can preserve connection even when paper records fail. To say a child's name with love is to place them within a chain of belonging. That chain matters when legal systems refuse to honour family fully. Friendship among women is another vital bond, though the record often hides it behind household labels. A neighbouring woman may not be kin by blood, but she becomes kin in practice. She watches children during a crisis. She lends meal. She brings sage for a cough. She repeats a rumour about a possible sale. She helps wash the body of someone who has died. She knows which silence means sorrow and which means anger. In a world of fragile security, friendship is infrastructure. Conversation carries much of this care. Black women talk while working, walking, mending, cooking, and tending children. The talk may sound casual, but it often serves several purposes at once. Who is ill? Who is pregnant? Who has been moved? Which road is watched? Which household is short on food? Who may be willing to trade? Who has heard church news? Who has seen strange soldiers? Gossip is not trivial here. It is a living information network. Society likes to mock women's talk, usually because it does not bother to understand how useful it is. Grief also shapes family life. Infants and children die. Women die in childbirth. Illness comes suddenly. Fever burns through houses and quarters. Accidents happen around fire, water, livestock, and tools. The 18th century is full of mourning even where records stay dry and polite about it. Black women carry grief in bodies already tired from labour. They may have little time to stop working, yet sorrow still enters the room. It shows in quietness, in irritability, in protective urgency toward the living, in songs sung slower than usual. Burial customs vary by place and circumstance, but remembrance matters deeply. Even where formal markers are absent or modest, the dead are held in story, prayer, gesture, and name. Women often lead this work of memory. They remember who belonged to whom. They remember a mother's sayings, a child's favourite tune, a husband's gait, a sister's laugh. History on paper may lose people. Families try not to. Free black families face different but still serious pressures. A marriage may be legally recognised in some places, but economic fragility can tear at it. One partner may need to travel for work. Children may be placed in service or apprenticeship under conditions that blur care and exploitation. White authorities can interfere. Courts can be expensive and biased. Even success carries tension. Because a modest household built through years of effort can be damaged quickly by illness, debt, or racial hostility. Scholars continue to disagree on how closely enslaved families resembled European household models in structure and expectation, and the answer is probably that comparison misses the point. Black families in 1775 are shaped by coercion, mobility, cultural inheritance, necessity, and creativity. They are not lesser versions of some ideal. They are their own forms of kinship, built under pressure and often remarkably adaptable. Blood ties matter. So do chosen ties. So does proximity. So does shared suffering. People make family with what the world leaves them. You begin to notice that women are often the keepers of continuity. They remember recipes, remedies, birthdays if such things can be marked, stories of parents and grandparents, warnings about certain places, ways to soothe infants, ways to handle difficult people, ways to braid hair, ways to stretch food, ways to pray when words are hard. This is cultural labour as much as emotional labour. It is how a people endure when official institutions fail or attack them. Touch carries kinship powerfully, a hand on the shoulder while passing, a child leaning against a mother's leg, fingers sorting another woman's hair, a baby tied close against the body, shared bedding in cold weather, the arm offered to an elder. These contacts make belonging physical. They say you're not alone, even when the larger structure of society insists on isolation, hierarchy, and saleable bodies. Sound matters too. The tone of a name spoken warmly, the low murmur of women talking after others sleep, a child laughing unexpectedly, a song with layered meanings, a warning hissed across a yard, a prayer whispered over a bed. In many black communities, music and rhythmic speech help hold emotion that cannot always be expressed directly. A lullaby can carry weariness, hope, memory, and a mother's determination in the same tune. There is also discipline within families, because affection does not erase stress. Mothers scold, grandmothers correct sharply, older siblings resent younger ones, couples argue, friends fall out over borrowed goods, hurt pride, or dangerous rumours. The pressure of daily life makes tempers flare. Yet repair matters. People who depend on each other must find ways back. A bowl of food shared after anger, a quieter voice the next morning, a child pulled close after being frightened. Domestic peace is not constant, it is continually rebuilt. One painful truth remains: under slavery, a woman's children may be seen by owners as labourers or assets long before the mother is ready to imagine them that way. This creates a terrible split between the private meaning of a child and the public value assigned by the market. Black mothers understand that split all too well. It sharpens their protectiveness. It deepens their fear. It also makes every ordinary moment of family life more precious. A child asleep across your lap is not just a child at rest. That child is also a life you're trying, against the odds, to keep whole, and despite everything. Hope survives in very practical forms, not in speeches, in plans, in a daughter learning skills that may help her live, in a son strong enough to walk with his father, in a cousin nearby, in a midwife's steady hands, in a friend who can be trusted, in a marriage that continues despite distance, in a baby who lives through a dangerous first year. Hope is not dreamy. It is stubborn and detail-oriented. You feel that most clearly at day's quiet edges, when labour loosens just enough for faces to matter more than tasks. Someone eats, someone leans close to talk, someone hushes a child, someone laughs at a story heard for the 10th time, someone holds grief behind the eyes and carries on anyway. In 1775, black women build family not because the world makes it easy, but because without those ties, the world would be almost impossible to bear. Love becomes method, care becomes structure. Kinship becomes the place where dignity is spoken aloud, even when law refuses to hear it. When the hands finally slow and the room grows quieter, another part of life begins to speak. It is less visible than cooking or washing, less easily counted than loaves, buckets, or hours in the field. Yet it may be just as necessary. In 1775, black women carry an inner world shaped by prayer, memory, song, silence, and the search for meaning in lives that are often denied fairness. The body works in public, the spirit works wherever it can find room. You notice first how faith lives in ordinary actions, not only in formal worship, in a whispered phrase while lifting a kettle, in a hand laid on a child's forehead, in the pause before eating, in the murmur spoken when someone leaves by road and may not return safely. Belief is often woven into movement. It does not always wait for church walls, printed sermons, or the approval of learned men with polished shoes and very confident opinions. Black women in 1775 encounter religion through many channels. Some are baptized in Anglican, Baptist, Methodist, Congregational, Presbyterian, or Catholic settings depending on region. Some live among households where Christianity is taught as duty, discipline, or salvation. Some preserve African religious ideas, practices, and ways of understanding the unseen, sometimes openly, more often quietly folded into everyday life. Many live at the meeting point of traditions, where one language of faith sits beside another without either fully disappearing. This mixture is important. It keeps old meanings alive. In the Low Country and other places with strong African cultural continuities, memory from West and Central Africa still shapes healing, naming, music, burial practices, and attitudes towards spirit, ancestors, and protection. Not everything survives clearly. Not everything survives unchanged. But people carry more than owners expect. A gesture remains. A rhythm remains. A way of reading dreams remains. An herb is used not only for its physical effect, but for what it signifies. A story told to a child holds older knowledge under new words. Christianity itself is not received in one simple way. For some black women, biblical stories offer deep comfort and a language for endurance. The Israelites in bondage, Hagar in the wilderness, Mary holding sorrow close. These figures can feel startlingly near. The idea that suffering is seen by God matters in a world that often pretends not to see it at all. For others, the religion preached by white colonists may feel compromised by hypocrisy. Liberty and salvation sound different when spoken by people who profit from bondage. That tension is impossible to miss, and yet people still believe, sometimes despite the preacher, sometimes against him. A mainstream fact of the era is that the Great Awakening, though earlier in the century, helped expand evangelical movements that reached black people in new ways by the 1760s and 1770s. Baptist and Methodist preaching, especially in some places, could seem more emotionally open than older established churches. The promise that all souls mattered before God had powerful appeal. Of course, white congregations did not suddenly become models of justice. Far from it. Many embrace spiritual equality in theory while preserving social cruelty in practice. The century excelled at contradiction. For black women, formal church attendance depends on location, status, owner permission, distance, and local custom. Some attend white churches in segregated spaces, perhaps in galleries, side benches, or other assigned areas. Some hear sermons while standing at the edges of a service. Some gather in informal meetings, in yards, cabins, or outdoor clearings. Some cannot attend regularly at all and build devotional life from memory, conversation, and fragments of scripture heard aloud. Printed books are scarce as literacy is uneven or even listening becomes a sacred skill. Listening matters enormously in an oral world. A woman may remember a prayer from childhood, a psalm from one Sunday months ago, a line from a hymn that catches in her chest for years. Words do not need paper to live. They travel through repetition. They settle into the body through melody. A phrase heard once at the right moment can become a private shelter during hard labour. People in the past were often far better at remembering spoken language than modern life encourages, because speech had to do more work. Song carries belief even when language must stay guarded. A lullaby may contain prayer. A work song may steady both body and spirit. A mourning song may hold grief that cannot be safely explained in plain speech. The sound of several voices together can change the atmosphere of a room. It softens loneliness. It orders breathing. It gives sorrow shape. Black women often lead or sustain these musical moments, especially with children, among family, or in evening gatherings where the flame is low and conversation moves more gently. The sensory world of faith is rich. You smell candle tallow, damp wool, warm bodies, pine smoke, or the faint sweetness of herbs drying near the hearth. You hear a hymn begin softly, with one voice finding the tune and others following. You feel rough floorboards under your feet or packed earth beneath a gathering outdoors. In a crowded room, the air grows warm with breath and presence. The sacred in 1775 is rarely separated from the physical. It arrives through sound, touch, and shared attention. Prayer is often practical. Please let the child cool by morning. Please let him return safely. Please let there be enough meal. Please keep that buyer away. Please give me strength not to answer sharply. The prayers may be formal or improvised. Some come from church language. Others rise straight from exhaustion and need. There is little ornament in them because the situation does not invite ornament. A woman praying in 1775 may be deeply eloquent, but she is seldom abstract. She is asking for things that matter by dawn. There is also thanksgiving, though not always the bright theatrical sort. Gratitude can be quiet and specific. A birth survived, rain after drought, a fever broken, a husband allowed to visit, a child asleep without coughing, shoes lasting one more season, the chance to sit for a few minutes with no one calling your name. Black women, like everyone else, often hold complaint and gratitude side by side. That is one of the most human features of spiritual life. Relief does not erase hardship. Hardship does not erase relief. Historians still argue over how directly African spiritual systems persisted among black communities in British North America in 1775, because direct records are scarce and often hostile. Some scholars see stronger continuity in ritual, healing, music, and cosmology than older historians once admitted. Others emphasize adaptation and blending under severe pressure. The most reasonable view may be that survival itself created mixtures. People preserved what they could, transformed what they had to, and made meaning from whatever remained available. Dreams and signs can matter deeply in this world. A vivid dream may be discussed seriously. An unexpected animal call, a strange silence before weather, a repeated phrase that seems to arrive at the right moment, all may be read with care. Not everyone interprets such things the same way, of course. But many people in the 18th century, not only black women, live in a universe more enchanted than the modern one likes to admit. The boundary between visible and invisible feels thinner. Providence, omen, warning, and memory share the same air. A quirky but revealing detail from the period is the use of protective objects or practices that might sit somewhere between medicine, faith, and folklore. A root carried in cloth, a charm tucked away, a special way of sweeping a threshold, certain words said over water. These things appear in scattered references. White observers often mock them, which usually means they either misunderstood them or felt threatened by the forms of knowledge outside their control. For the women using them, such practices could offer reassurance, continuity, and a sense that not every force in life belonged to the master's world. Storytelling is part of this inner landscape too. At the close of day, a woman may tell children a tale that sounds playful on the surface but carries warning, humour, or moral weight underneath. Trickster stories, biblical retellings, family memories, and fragments of African narrative traditions can all mingle in oral life. Story is not separate from faith. Both help order experience. Both help answer the same question, what kind of world is this? And how do you live within it without losing yourself? Black women often become keepers of these stories simply because they are near the hearth, the cradle, the sick bed, and the evening room where children listen. They decide which tale suits a frightened child, which one gives courage, which one makes people laugh enough to loosen the day's tension. Humour belongs here too. Gentle sarcasm, sly commentary, the raised eyebrow in verbal form, all of it eases pressure. Spiritual life is not made only of solemn faces. Sometimes laughter is the sound of survival refusing to become stone. Formal clergy do not control all religious authority. An older woman with a reputation for wisdom may carry more practical spiritual influence than a distant minister. A midwife who knows prayers and herbs may be sought out more readily than a church officer. A mother who can calm a room with one hymn has authority of her own. Women shape belief through use, not title. That fact matters because institutions in 1775 are mostly designed to rank men loudly and let women keep civilization functioning quietly. The moral world black women navigate is complex. They are expected to obey unjust rules, speak carefully, avoid provoking power, and preserve family under impossible conditions. Faith can intensify these dilemmas rather than solve them. What does righteousness look like when the legal order itself is wrong? When is silence wise, and when does it become surrender? When is anger a sin, and when is it proper recognition of evil? No single answer settles these questions. Women work them out through judgment, counsel, prayer, and experience. Some find meaning through endurance, viewing survival itself as a testimony of God's sustaining presence. Some find it through community, feeling the sacred most strongly when voices join. Some find it in memory, in keeping alive names, practices, and songs the world tries to erase. Some find it in small moments of beauty, the evening light on a floorboard, the smell of bread, the sound of a child laughing after sickness. Meaning does not have to be grand to be real. The home often becomes a sanctuary in the loosest but most necessary sense. Not always safe, not always private, yet capable of holding moments set apart from labour's raw demands. A woman may sit by low firelight, mending in her lap, and hum something learned years before. Children grow drowsy. Another woman answers with a line of her own. A prayer is spoken for someone absent. Silence follows, not empty but full. This is not ceremony in elaborate robes. It is holiness in work clothes. Sound changes at such times. The day's hard noises fade. In their place come murmurs, creaks, the occasional pop of the fire, distant insects in warm weather, wind at the wall in cold weather. The body, which has been all function, becomes aware again of feeling. Weariness rises. So does reflection. Black women in 1775 do not always have the luxury of long inward retreats, but inward life persists all the same. It appears in pauses, in whispered words, in repeated songs, in the way someone looks toward the dark and keeps going. There is comfort in shared belief, but also comfort in being known without many words. A friend hears the roughness in your voice and prays differently that night. An elder notices your silence and leaves a bit of herb tea by the hearth. A child asks a question about heaven or angels or why bad people prosper, and the answer given is less about doctrine than tenderness. Spiritual life lives there too, in the refusal to let harshness have the last tone in the room. By the time the flame burns lower, the unseen work of the Spirit has done its part, not by removing suffering, that would be too simple, by helping people bear it without giving up their sense of meaning, relation, and dignity. Black women carry beliefs that comfort, challenge, warn, and sustain them. Through prayer, memory, song, healing, and story. They create spaces where the soul can still breathe. In a world eager to claim the body, that breathing room is no small thing. It may be one of the greatest powers they possess. In 1775, the air is thick with talk about liberty. Men in taverns, town meetings, churches, docks, and counting houses suddenly discover a passionate interest in oppression. It is quite a performance. They speak of rights, tyranny, representation, and chains, often while standing in a society built quite comfortably on actual chains. For black women, this language does not drift by as abstract noise. It arrives in kitchens, streets, markets, washyards, and doorways. It enters the day in fragments, a raised voice outside a tavern, a newspaper read aloud by someone pleased with his own importance, a whisper in a yard, a rumour carried from town to farm and back again. You hear the words before you see the events. That is often how history feels. It comes as sound first. By 1775, the crisis between Britain and the colonies is no longer a distant quarrel for educated men with ink on their cuffs. Tension has been building for years. New taxes, trade restrictions, boycotts, troop movements, and political protest have turned daily life uneasy in many places. In towns, people argue over tea, paper, port closures, imported goods, and loyalty to the crown. In the countryside, news travels more slowly, but it still travels. And black women, whether enslaved or free, are listening closely because political turmoil can change the rules of survival very quickly. The language of the time is impossible to miss. Liberty, natural rights, freedom, slavery, though often used by white colonists to describe their own grievances in wildly inappropriate fashion. The irony would be funny if it were not so revealing. When a merchant complains he's being treated like a slave because a customs official annoyed him, a black woman hearing that comparison does not need a lecture in hypocrisy. She already understands the difference between metaphor and reality. Still, the rising conflict is not meaningless to her. It may open danger, it may open possibility. That uncertainty gives 1775 a peculiar feeling. The world seems unstable in a new way. White families speak more urgently. Men travel. Drilling begins in some communities. Supplies are counted. Goods become scarce or dearer. Letters arrive with serious faces attached. Women of households discuss homespun cloth, boycotts, shortages, and rumours while expecting black women to continue their labour. Beneath the surface of all this political excitement, the meals must still be cooked, the floors must still be swept. Babies still cry in revolutionary times, which is very inconsiderate of them but entirely realistic. For free black women in towns like Boston, Newport, New York, Philadelphia, and Charleston, the atmosphere can be electric and uneasy at once. Crowds gather, bells ring, soldiers march, goods become harder to find. Customers spend differently. The streets carry a sharper edge. A woman selling food, laundry services, or small goods has to pay attention to shifting patterns. Is the port quiet today? Are troops nearby? Will a crowd turn ugly? Is this a good time to be visible in the street? Or a better time to stay close to known faces? For enslaved women, politics often reaches them through the moods and decisions of owners. A master excited by patriot rhetoric may become more distracted, more demanding, or more anxious. Another who remains loyal to Britain may speak bitterly and watch his household more closely. Travel may increase. Cash may tighten. Food supplies may be hoarded. A woman serving in a household hears debates over supper, catches names and places, and learns that white men are divided among themselves. That alone can be significant. People in power seem less solid when they start shouting at each other. The battles at Lexington and Concord in April 1775 would have sent shockwaves through New England and far beyond. News does not move evenly, but it moves with force when people are frightened. Someone has heard there was gunfire. Someone else says militias stood their ground. Another insists the king's troops marched back bloodied. Another says war has begun. Another says not yet. A black woman hearing these reports may not know which version is correct, but she understands one thing clearly. Ordinary routines can now be broken by military events far larger than the household. That matters because war disrupts labour, travel, food, and control. Soldiers eat, armies requisition, roads become risky, markets wobble, employers grow nervous, opportunities appear and vanish. In wartime confusion, some enslaved people seek freedom by flight, especially when military movement weakens local surveillance. Others stay put because the dangers are too great, their children are too young, or the available information is too uncertain. A woman with dependents cannot gamble lightly. Freedom may beckon, but so do hunger, violence, and recapture. Black women are often forced to judge politics in practical terms. Fine speeches are less important than concrete questions. Will this bring troops nearby? Will prices rise? Will travel passes be harder to secure? Will my husband be moved? Will this confusion make escape more possible or more dangerous? Will white people be too busy arguing to notice certain things, or so frightened that they notice everything? This is political thinking of a very serious kind, though nobody in powdered society would likely call it that. A mainstream fact of the period is that black people on both sides of the colonial divide paid close attention to the conflict, because war could alter their condition. Some patriots spoke grandly of liberty while keeping enslaved labour. Some British officials later offered freedom to enslaved people who fled rebel masters under certain conditions. In 1775 itself, that possibility is not yet fully formed in every mind, but the logic is already taking shape. Empires and colonies are fighting. Divisions mean openings, openings mean decisions, and decisions are costly, especially for women with children. A mother considering flight cannot think only of herself. Can she carry an infant far enough? Can older children keep quiet? Is there food on the road? Who can be trusted? Which direction is safer? Can she leave at night? What if a child falls ill? What if a promised refuge closes its door? Men in political pamphlets adore the language of principle. Women living under slavery often have to translate principle into feet, weather, distance, and bread. Newspapers contribute to the charged atmosphere, even for those who cannot read them directly. Printed words are read aloud in taverns, homes, workshops, and streets. Names of towns, committees, generals, and governors circulate in speech. The sound of print entering oral life is powerful. A woman may not hold the newspaper in her own hands, yet she still receives its force through other people's voices. This is one reason political language spread so widely. 18th century society is full of listeners. Boycotts and non-importation movements also touch daily life in practical ways. Colonists seeking to resist British policy call for reduced consumption of imported goods. This means more homespun cloth, more domestic production, more attention to local substitutes. Once again, who bears the labour of this patriotic virtue? Very often women, and within that, very often black women. More spinning, more weaving, more mending, more preserving, more making do. Political principle has a way of arriving as extra work in somebody else's hands. A quirky detail from the revolutionary atmosphere is how eagerly colonists embrace symbolic acts. Bonfires, liberty poles, public readings, songs, ribbons, homespun garments, and carefully staged displays of political commitment all become fashionable. Fashionable naturally. In the serious moral sense people use when they desperately want to appear above fashion. Black women witness this theatre at close range. They may help sew the homespun that marks patriotic sacrifice. They may prepare food for gatherings celebrating resistance. They may hear liberty toasted by men who would object strongly if liberty walked out the back gate wearing a head wrap and carrying a child. The contradictions are impossible to ignore, and impossible to ignore safely. Open comment can be dangerous. So black women often become expert readers of tone, choosing when to speak, when to stay silent, and when to let a lifted eyebrow do the work. Irony lives quietly in such rooms. It has to. To survive among hypocrisy, one either goes mad or develops a very fine internal commentary. Free black communities also face difficult calculations. Some free men may join militia efforts or support patriot causes, hoping that participation will prove loyalty and earn broader acceptance. Others remain cautious, doubting that white revolutionaries intend freedom to travel very far. Women in these communities feel the strain too. If male kin leave, incomes change. If unrest grows, street safety shifts. If authorities panic, black mobility may be watched more intensely. Politics never floats above domestic life. It drops directly into the household basin and muddies the water. Scholars still argue about how quickly ordinary black women in different regions understood the full implications of the revolutionary crisis. Because evidence is scattered and often indirect, some certainly grasped the hypocrisy at once. Others likely interpreted events more through household disruption than ideological language. Most probably did both. Human beings are perfectly capable of noticing big ideas and immediate consequences at the same time. A woman can understand that empires are shifting while also worrying whether there will be enough meal by Thursday. Military presence alters atmosphere even without battle nearby. The sight of uniforms, weapons, horses, wagons, and marching men changes the texture of a town. Noise sharpens, curfews and patrols may increase. Roads feel different. A black woman moving through such spaces must calculate visibility carefully. A familiar route can become exposed. A harmless errand can become a risky encounter. Soldiers may bring news, work, danger, or opportunities for information. They also bring uncertainty, which is often the most exhausting thing of all. Some women hear that the British may be more favourable to enslaved people simply because rebel masters fear such a possibility. Others hear that patriot victory may somehow improve things in the long run. Others trust neither side. Very sensible of them. In 1775, there is little evidence that powerful white factions on either side intend full racial equality. Yet conflict unsettles the normal order, and in that unsettling lies a sliver of agency. When those above are distracted, those below sometimes move. That movement need not mean dramatic escape alone. It can mean gathering information more carefully, hiding small resources, strengthening kin ties, watching which officials come and go, learning which roads are used, noticing who is nervous. Political turmoil rewards attention, and black women are already practiced observers. They know the value of rumour, especially when official truth arrives late or not at all. Sound remains central to this revolutionary year. Bells ring alarms, men argue in taverns, drums tap out military discipline, hooves strike road, doors slam harder, papers rustle, voices rise over phrases like Congress, militia, king, rights, rebellion. In domestic rooms, these public noises filter in while ordinary chores continue. A pot is still stirred, linen is still wrung, a child is still rocked. This is what makes 1775 feel so vivid. History is loud outside and repetitive inside, and black women must inhabit both worlds at once. Emotionally, the year invites no easy posture. There is curiosity, suspicion, fear, bitter amusement, cautious hope, and tired realism. A woman may hear a white man denounce tyranny and feel a flash of anger so clear it almost cools her. Another may quietly wonder whether war could crack open a path that peace never would. Another may simply resent that all this excitement produces more shortages and less sleep. History does not always inspire noble feelings. Sometimes it is just inconvenient and dangerous in equal measure, and yet, these months matter because they teach a crucial lesson. White power is not unified. Empires can wobble. Colonists can rebel. Authorities can disagree. Laws can change. Men who seem permanent can suddenly look frightened. For black women, that realization is not abstract. It enters the senses. You hear it in arguments. You smell it in gunpowder and nervous sweat. You feel it in the altered pace of the street and the tension in a household that no longer knows exactly what tomorrow will bring. In such moments, listening becomes its own kind of preparation. The talk of liberty may be compromised, theatrical, and deeply incomplete, but it is still dangerous in ways the speakers do not fully control. Once the word is loose in the world, people other than its original owners may begin to measure it against their own lives. Black women do exactly that. Quietly, carefully, with children near, with work in hand, with history knocking at the door in muddy boots. They do not need a pamphlet to understand the stakes. They're already living the question and everyone else has suddenly decided to debate. When a society depends on force, it develops an endless fascination with rules. In 1775, black women live among instructions, warnings, permissions, passes, curfews, inspections, and punishments designed to keep them useful, visible, and afraid. The control can be blunt or subtle. It can arrive as a shouted order, a written law, a raised hand, a withheld ration, a suspicious glance, or a demand to explain where you are going and why. Power does not like uncertainty, especially when it rests on stolen labour. So it tries to regulate everything. You feel that regulation in the body first. Stand here. Do that. Not now. Not there. Speak carefully. Move quickly. Return before dark. These commands shape posture, pace, and breath. A woman learns how to carry herself in ways that reduce attention, though attention often comes anyway. She learns the sound of irritation in a white voice before the words are fully formed. She learns when to lower her eyes and when that would seem too slow. She learns how to answer briefly enough to avoid challenge, but not so briefly that it reads as insolence. This is exhausting knowledge, and it must be practiced daily. For enslaved black women, legal control varies by colony and local custom, but the larger pattern is plain. Movement may require permission. Gatherings may be restricted. Trade may be watched. Literacy can be discouraged or forbidden in some places and circumstances. Weapons are prohibited. Testimony in court is limited or denied against white people. Marriage has little legal protection. Children inherit the status of enslaved mothers in most British colonies, making the female body itself part of the machinery of property. That cold legal fact hangs over ordinary life like a permanent storm cloud. Punishment is built into this system, not as an accident, but as a method. A woman may face whipping, confinement, extra labour, sale, separation from family, reduced food, public humiliation, or other penalties depending on where she lives and who claims authority over her. Some punishments aim at the body, others aim at the heart. Many aim at both. The threat alone can shape behaviour long before force is used. You do not have to strike someone every day to control her if she has already learned what a strike can mean. Domestic service has its own forms of punishment. A mistress may scold endlessly, deny small privileges, accuse theft without proof, inspect work with theatrical disappointment, or use emotional pressure as a constant tool. This kind of rule can look almost genteel from the outside. It is still domination. A woman in a townhouse or farm kitchen may live under close surveillance where every pause, broken cup, misplaced spoon, or altered expression is noticed. The body stays tense because there is no truly private offstage space in which to relax. Field labour brings other risks. Overseers judge pace, line straightness, the amount weeded, planted, lifted, or carried. Heat, pregnancy, illness, and fatigue do not guarantee mercy. A woman who falls behind may be accused of laziness even when her hands are swollen or her child is sick. In some places, women endure punishment while still expected to work the next day because the system values labour more than recovery. Cruelty and productivity are treated as compatible. The century manages this contradiction with alarming confidence. Free black women are not beyond regulation either. Their movement can be challenged, their papers questioned, their businesses restricted, their respectability judged harshly. In some places, special taxes, registration requirements, apprenticeship rules, or residency restrictions constrain free black life. A woman may technically belong to herself and still be stopped in the street, harassed by officials, or placed one accusation away from severe hardship. Freedom exists, but it walks on narrow ground. A mainstream fact of the era is that colonial slave codes and local racial laws were designed not only to extract labour, but to prevent alliance, mobility, and independent community formation. Authorities feared revolt, escape, and collective action. They also feared information. This is why meetings, movement at night, drumming in some places, trade without permission, and unsupervised travel could attract suspicion. Black women lived inside this watchfulness while still trying to build family, exchange goods, visit loved ones, and practice belief. The rules are not always applied evenly. That makes them worse. Unpredictability is useful to power. If one owner permits a market trip and another punishes the same act, uncertainty itself becomes a tool. If a woman can never be sure whether today's leniency will become tomorrow's accusation, she must stay alert all the time. This steals rest even when no punishment is happening. Fear settles into the nervous system. The body begins to live in readiness. And yet, readiness can turn into resistance. Resistance in 1775 is not only rebellion in the dramatic sense, it often appears in smaller, quieter, more constant forms. A woman slows the pace of work slightly when she can. She hides a little food. She keeps back a scrap of cloth. She pretends not to hear an instruction immediately. She passes information. She visits a husband without permission. She teaches a child something an owner would prefer remain unknown. She tends a secret garden patch. She breaks a tool by accident that was perhaps not entirely accidental. She preserves dignity in speech and bearing when the system expects collapse. These acts matter. They are not trivial. They are ways of asserting self within a world arranged to deny selfhood. Black women also resist through care. This may sound soft, but it is not weak. To protect children, maintain kin ties, preserve names, keep stories alive, pass on skills, heal illness, and create moments of joy under coercion is a form of defiance. The system prefers people stripped to function. Care insists on personhood. A mother braiding her daughter's hair with patience in a harsh world is doing more than grooming. She's saying, in action, that this child is worthy of attention and beauty. Speech can be resistance too, though often through indirection. A joke with two meanings. A warning disguised as gossip. A song whose plain words hold deeper feeling. A respectful answer delivered with exact correctness that leaves no room for insult, yet no surrender of inner dignity. Black women become skilled in layered communication because open challenge can be dangerous. Meaning learns to travel by side roads. A quirky but revealing feature of the time is how often white observers described enslaved women as either submissive or insolent, with little room between. This tells you more about white anxiety than about black women's actual behaviour. Any self-possession could be read as defiance. Any fatigue could be called sulking. Any grief could be labelled stubbornness. Colonial society often misread black women because it could not imagine them as fully human without threatening its own logic. So the descriptions wobble between condescension and fear. Historians continue to debate how best to measure everyday resistance because archives tend to record moments when authorities noticed something had gone wrong, not the countless daily acts they failed to detect. A missing chicken appears in a complaint. A hidden kindness does not. A runaway ad survives on paper. A warning passed quietly from one woman to another often vanishes from the record. This means the documentary trace understates resistance by its very nature. Much of what preserved life was never written down. Running away is one visible form of resistance, though it was never simple. Women fled alone, with children, with husbands, or in larger groups. Some sought towns, some followed military movement, some tried to reach kin, some hid locally for days or weeks. Running required nerve, knowledge, and luck. A woman had to weigh speed against silence, food against travel lightness, the child's need for comfort against the need for secrecy. The road was full of danger, but staying could be dangerous too. There was no painless option. Staying put could involve its own strategies. A woman might cultivate the impression of obedience while quietly creating room to maneuver. She might make herself indispensable in one task to gain limited privileges in another. She might use her knowledge of a household's routines to protect family members or gather news. She might form ties across properties or neighbourhoods through trade, church-going, childbirth, healing, or market work. Systems of domination often depend on the fantasy that the dominated remain isolated. Black women repeatedly frustrate that fantasy. Control over time is another major battleground. Owners claim labour time, but women keep carving out slivers of their own. Late evening gardening, early morning visits, talk while walking to water, exchange during laundry, prayer after others sleep, mending something personal during a pause meant for household repair. These fragments of time can hold astonishing importance because they permit intention not wholly dictated from above. Life becomes livable through such fragments. Punishment aims to make examples of people. Community often responds by quietly undoing some of that damage. After a whipping, someone brings salve. After a scolding, someone offers a look that says the scolder is ridiculous, which can be emotionally sustaining in ways historians should probably acknowledge more often. After a sale rumour, women gather information fast. After a child is frightened, someone stays nearby. Systems of fear depend on isolation. Mutual care weakens that isolation. Even when it cannot stop the original blow, sound is part of the atmosphere of control. The crack of a command, boots approaching, keys, dogs, a bell signalling work, the scrape of a chair before judgment is spoken. But sound also belongs to resistance, a coded phrase, a song carried across distance, laughter that refuses the mood of submission, quiet footsteps at the right hour, a knock recognized by those who know. Power listens for threats. It often underestimates how much can be done through ordinary noise. Touch also tells the story. The ache of restraint in the shoulders, the sting left by punishment, the rough handle of a hoe gripped by tired palms, the soft head of a child tucked under the chin after fear, the hidden coin pressed quickly into a hand, the folded note, if literacy is present, or the bundle of food passed without comment. Resistance is not always fiery and public. Much of it is tactile, close, and immediate. Black women's resistance is sometimes overlooked because later stories of defiance have favoured male rebellion, military action, or dramatic escape. Those events matter, certainly, but daily refusal by women mattered too. Delayed work, hidden resources, nurtured children, protected lovers, preserved rituals, cultivated gardens, exchanged warnings, and maintain self-respect were not minor details beneath history. They were history as lived. They were how people survived long enough to imagine larger change. Some women also resisted by shaping how younger people understood the world. They taught caution without teaching surrender. They explained who could be trusted. They passed along names, places, stories, and practical wisdom. A girl learned how to read a room. Yes, but also how to keep something inward and unbroken. A boy learned where pride was dangerous and where it was necessary. This moral education did not appear in legal codes, but it may have mattered more than the codes in the long run. Scholars still differ on how much leverage individual women could exercise within particular households. Some gained a degree of influence through age, skill, or familiarity. Others remained acutely vulnerable no matter how competent they were. Influence, where it existed, was never the same as freedom. It could disappear with an owner's mood, a death, an inheritance, a debt, or a rumour. Still, women used what room they found. Human beings are remarkably resourceful in narrow spaces. That resourcefulness often had a calm outward face. To an observer, a woman may seem simply busy, quiet, dutiful, ordinary. Beneath that surface, calculations run constantly. Who is watching? What can be saved? Whom to warn? Whether this is the day to ask for something, or the day to disappear into competence. Whether the soldier on the road matters, whether the market rumour is true, whether the child knows enough to keep silent. Resistance does not always look rebellious. Often it looks like intelligence wearing an apron, and so the web of rules never fully settles into total control. It wounds, it constrains, it terrifies, but it does not entirely master the inner life or the bonds among people. Black women in 1775 endure punishments meant to reduce them, yet they keep creating meaning, loyalty, strategy, and small zones of freedom within the very cracks of the system. A law can command movement. It cannot easily command love. A whip can enforce labour. It cannot by itself erase memory. A curfew can limit steps. It cannot stop quiet planning in the dark. That is the deeper truth beneath all the rules. Domination is never as complete as it imagines. Black women carry within daily life 1,000 acts of persistence that frustrate the tidy fantasy of absolute control. They bend, calculate, wait, protect, improvise, and sometimes strike back in ways large or small. The record may not always honour those acts. The day certainly does not reward them generously, yet they remain there, steady and real, woven through the hours like a hidden thread stronger than the cloth around it. Beyond the walls of any single house or quarter, another world is always in motion. It is made of paths, errands, market stalls, borrowed tools, exchanged remedies, shared news, and the kind of practical generosity that keeps people alive when official systems do very little of the sort. In 1775, black women help build this world every day. They carry not only baskets and buckets, but connections. They move through spaces where trade, healing, childcare, and information all mingle together, forming a community life that is easy to overlook if you only stare at formal records and important men with ink stains. You notice first that movement itself creates network. A walk to market is never just a walk. A trip for water is never only about water. A woman sent to buy onions as salt fish, cloth, or lamp oil may return with far more than goods. She returns with prices, rumours, warnings, jokes, small favours, possible opportunities, and a clearer sense of which way the town or countryside is leaning that day. Black women are often central to this flow because their daily labour places them in constant contact with thresholds. Kitchen doors, yard gates, alleyways, pump handles, market tables, sick beds, back steps. The edges of households turn out to be where society actually talks. Markets are especially alive. In urban streets and rural trading points, people buy and sell food, cloth, candles, herbs, poultry, eggs, cooked goods, soap, and countless small necessities. The air smells of produce, mud, fish, horse sweat, wood smoke, and bodies moving close together. Voices overlap in bargains, greetings, complaints, and sly remarks. A black woman may appear to be merely buying meal or selling greens, but the market also lets her observe who seems prosperous, who seems frightened, which ships have arrived, what goods are scarce, and whether soldiers or officials are nearby. This knowledge has value, sometimes more than the onions. For free black women, market work can be an essential source of income. Selling pies, fruit, vegetables, laundry services, sewn goods, or prepared food may provide cash that keeps a household afloat. These activities require skill beyond the product itself. You must know when to arrive, how to price, whom to trust, which customers will pay late, and which corners of the market favour certain goods. Reputation matters greatly. A woman known for clean linen, well-baked bread, or reliable herb mixtures may build a fragile but real standing within a local economy. Enslaved women also participate in exchange, though the arrangements are often constrained and precarious. Some are permitted to sell produce from garden plots, eggs, crafted items, or extra food. Others trade informally among neighbours and kin. Permission can be uneven, and success may attract unwanted attention. Yet these small exchanges can make an enormous difference. A handful of coins, a little extra meal, a spool of thread, a better chance of feeding children well enough to sleep. Economic life at this level is intimate and immediate. A mainstream fact of the period is that black women played major roles in local provisioning economies, especially in towns and port cities. They sold food, cooked for others, washed clothes, nursed the sick, and moved goods through everyday channels that larger histories often treat as background scenery. But background scenery does not usually feed people. These women did. The ordinary economy rested heavily on their labour and judgment. One of the most important forms of community work is healing. Formal medicine in 1775 can be expensive, distant, unreliable, or all three at once. So people depend heavily on home remedies, practical nursing, and women with trusted experience. Black women often gather, grow, prepare, and apply herbs for fevers, stomach troubles, coughs, childbirth, wounds, skin irritations, and pain. Knowledge comes from African traditions, indigenous contact, European household medicine, and plain old experimentation because somebody had to try something when a child would not stop burning with fever. A room where healing happens feels different from a market. Quieter, more focused. The smell changes too. Vinegar, mint, sage, garlic, steeped roots, clean cloth if it can be found. Sweat from illness, tallow from candlelight. A woman sits at a bedside and watches breathing. She feels a pulse. She adjusts blankets. She coaxes broth or tea between cracked lips. She knows which herb cools, which soothes, which opens the chest, which should never be given in too much quantity. She may not use the vocabulary of learned physicians, but she often understands bodies with far more practical accuracy than a man who arrives on horseback twice a year. Midwives belong within this world of healing and community as well. They do not only deliver babies, they carry news, advice, emotional steadiness, and often moral authority. A woman trusted at a birth is trusted with vulnerability at its most intense. She sees homes in their rawest moments. She knows who has help, who lacks food, whose husband is absent, whose roof leaks, whose children are healthy, whose body is overworked, and whose household is barely holding together. Midwives become keepers of local truths precisely because they are invited where others are not. Historians still debate how extensive black women's healing networks were across different colonies, since the surviving records often name white doctors while leaving everyday female practitioners anonymous. But practical evidence points strongly to deep local knowledge. Remedies appear in account books, recipes circulate, court records occasionally mention women accused of curing, poisoning, or practicing improper arts, which often means they were known to be effective enough to attract both dependence and fear. When official medicine cannot meet daily needs, communities create their own systems. A quirky detail from the era is the sheer variety of substances people relied upon. Herb teas, onion poultices, goose grease, honey, vinegar washes, burnt bread, camphor, rum, ashes, goose feathers, wool flannel, garlic, rosemary, and all manner of roots and barks appear in household treatment. Some remedies help, some do very little, Some probably make things worse. The 18th century is full of confidence paired with uncertainty. Yet within that uncertainty, black women often become the practical judges of what seems to work and what should be quietly ignored, no matter how highly some gentleman recommends it. Community is built not only through crisis, but through ordinary help. A woman borrows a kettle, another lends soap. Someone watches a child during a market trip. Someone shares yeast starter. Someone offers a corner of garden ground. Someone passes along a bit of cloth too small for one purpose but perfect for another. These small acts create webs of obligation and care. They also create dignity. To give and receive help within a community is different from receiving scraps from those who rule over you. One reinforces dependence from above. The other strengthens connection sideways. Children move through these networks too. They carry messages, accompany mothers to market, fetch herbs, learn familiar faces, and absorb the map of who belongs to whom. A child quickly learns which woman will scold kindly, which one gives good broth, which one can set a splinter right, and which yard offers the safest place to linger. Community is educational in this sense. It teaches belonging through repeated contact. A child knows the neighbourhood in smell, voice, and doorway long before any formal lesson begins. Gossip has an unfair reputation, usually from people afraid of it. In 1775, gossip among black women is often a vital information system. It tracks births, illness, marriages, sales, prices, deaths, quarrels, troop movements, strange visitors, legal changes, and the moods of white households. Information moves more effectively when wrapped in ordinary conversation. A woman shelling peas while speaking softly with another may be transmitting news more important than anything printed in a newspaper that week. The facts may not always arrive neat and perfect, but they travel fast, and speed can matter more than elegance. In port towns, the network expands further because sailors, dock workers, cooks, tavern servants, and market sellers all contribute fragments of knowledge. Ships bring goods and stories. So do travellers. Black women near waterfronts may hear several versions of the same event in one afternoon, sorting truth from exaggeration as best they can. This takes judgment. People love to dramatise. Someone always claims the world is ending before supper. Someone else insists nothing matters until it already does. A good listener learns to weigh the source as much as the message. Exchange can also be emotional. Women offer advice to each other about marriage, childbirth, difficult employers, discipline, prayer, clothing, and survival. They reassure the frightened, tease the proud, correct the foolish, and praise the competent. Such speech helps shape community standards. It tells younger women what counts as admirable, dangerous, shameful, or wise. Formal institutions may be controlled by men, but social judgment often travels through women's voices at thresholds and hearths. There are tensions too, of course. Communities are never pure harmony. Competition for customers can sting. Borrowed goods may not return. Rumours can wound unfairly. Colour, status, birthplace, language, and proximity to white households can create divisions. An enslaved woman allowed to market may be envied by another with stricter supervision. A free woman may look cautiously on someone she fears will draw official notice. Human beings remain human no matter how noble historians wish them to sound. Yet even with friction, interdependence remains powerful. Sound defines these communal spaces vividly. Vendors calling prices, children darting and laughing, women discussing weather and bread in one breath, politics in the next, a baby crying from a sling, a pot lid knocked against a table, hooves passing, someone humming under her breath while sorting beans, someone lowering her voice for the important part. You hear how community is made through overlapping conversations rather than one grand speech. The social world is stitched together in fragments. Touch matters here too. The heft of a basket handle cutting into the palm, the press of a coin, the softness of herbs tied in cloth, the rough cheek of a child leaning against your skirt, the warm bowl handed over without ceremony, the quick squeeze of a wrist that signals concern. These are small contacts, but they help make survival feel shared rather than solitary. Black women also help sustain ritual forms of care around birth, sickness, and death. When a baby is expected, experienced women gather supplies, prepare linens, heat water, calm younger relatives, and monitor signs. When sickness comes, they sit through the night, change cloths, spoon liquids, and assess whether improvement is real or only wishful thinking. When death enters a household, women often wash the body, comfort mourners, organise practical needs, and hold memory in place. Community depends on people willing to do these close tasks. Black women often do them. Scholars continue to disagree about how broad these networks were across class and status lines, especially where surveillance was intense. Some communities may have been highly connected, others more scattered. Much depended on geography, labour systems, travel restrictions, and local trust. But wherever black women could move with even limited regularity through markets, wells, roads, churches, kitchens, and sick rooms, connections formed. Human beings are network makers. Women responsible for daily survival become especially good at it. A particularly revealing part of this world is the informal economy of favours. Not everything is bought. Much is remembered. I watched your child last week. You lent me a pot in winter. You brought herbs when my cough was bad. You warned me about that overseer's temper. Such debts are not always counted aloud, but they shape future help. Trust builds over repeated acts. So does distrust. The community memory is long, and often more accurate than the official one. Within these networks, black women gain something rare and valuable recognition by other black women who understand the full weight of the day. In white-controlled spaces, a woman may be seen as labour first. In her own circles, she may be seen as the one who bakes well, the one with healing hands, the one who knows prices, the one who tells the truth, the one who can settle quarrels, the one whose baby survived a hard winter, the one who has buried too many and still shows up with broth for others. Such recognition is a form of dignity no law can easily confer or revoke. Even beauty appears here, though quietly. Bunches of greens laid neatly in a basket, blue cloth tied around a bundle of herbs, a loaf browned just right, a baby wrapped carefully, hair smoothed before stepping out, a market tray arranged with more order than strictly necessary. These touches matter because they say community is not made of need alone. It also contains taste, pride, and the wish to make things look cared for. As the day winds toward evening, baskets grow lighter or emptier. News has circulated, remedies have been shared, and children are gathered home. The streets, yards, and paths slowly thin, yet the web remains. A woman returns not only with goods, but with a sharper sense of her place in a living network of exchange and support. That network cannot abolish the hardships of 1775. It cannot erase slavery, hunger, or fear, but it can soften isolation, spread knowledge, and turn scattered survival into something closer to communal endurance. That is no small achievement. It may be the reason many lives hold together at all. Black women are often the hidden engineers of this social world, moving between market, household, sickbed, garden, and gossip with remarkable steadiness. They provision, heal, warn, comfort, trade, and remember. Through those acts, they create a civic life beneath the official one, practical and warm and watchful. In the gaps left by law, wealth, and power, they build something durable with hands already busy. The result is a community that breathes through shared labour and mutual care, one ordinary exchange at a time. By nightfall, the world of 1775 grows quieter, but it never becomes truly still. Darkness lowers itself over fields, yards, alleys, kitchens, lofts, and cabins with a kind of soft authority, and yet beneath that softness lies uncertainty. For black women, evening is not simply the end of labour. It is the hour when fatigue, fear, memory, tenderness, and calculation all draw closer together. The body begins to slow. The mind often does not. You feel the day in your bones now. In the shoulders first, then the hands, then the feet. The feet always seem to save their complaints for last, which is rude but understandable. After hours of carrying, standing, bending, walking, and waiting, the body grows heavy with effort. A woman sits at last, or leans for a moment, or lowers herself onto rough bedding with the caution of someone whose muscles have become strangers. The skin carries the whole day with it. Smoke in the hair, soap on the knuckle, dust on the hem, dampness in the cuffs, the smell of onions, wool, wood ash, milk, sweat and evening air. Night gathers all of it. The light changes the mood of every room. A cabin that seemed merely cramped by day becomes intimate by firelight. A kitchen that roared with heat and clatter becomes a place of shadows, embers, and quieter voices. A town street that felt sharp and public in daylight now turns uncertain, with the rattle of wheels fading and the occasional footstep sounding louder than it should. Candles sputter, hearths glow low. The moon, where visible, lays pale colour across worn boards and packed paths. Darkness softens edges, but it also sharpens imagination. That is one of night's tricks. It comforts and troubles at once. Black women in 1775 often used the evening hours to finish work that could not be done earlier. Clothing must still be mended. Children must still be washed or soothed. Food for morning may need preparation. A pot has to be scraped clean. Water may need bringing in. Wood must be checked. Ashes must be banked so the fire can be coaxed to life again at dawn without too much struggle. The labour changes pace, but it does not vanish. It simply becomes quieter and more inward. For enslaved women, night can bring a brief reduction in direct oversight, though never full freedom from it. In some places, it may be the only time to speak privately with family or neighbours. A husband on another property may arrive if distance and patrols allow. A mother may finally hold her child without doing 3 other tasks at once. News may be exchanged in low tones near a doorway or hearth. A shared laugh, a whispered complaint, a warning, a prayer, a plan for tomorrow, all find room in these darkened hours because daylight has claimed so much else. Free black women may also find evening both welcome and uneasy. The day's work is done, perhaps, but rent, food, illness, and local hostility do not sleep. A woman who has taken in washing or sold goods in market may count what little money came in and measure it against what must be spent. Candle wax itself becomes part of the calculation. So does fuel. So does the weather forecast written not on paper but in the smell of the air and the way the wind touches the shutters. Children alter the mood of night with their needs and their softness. A child too tired to eat properly may droop against a shoulder. Another may chatter beyond reason because sleep has not yet claimed him. A baby cries with that relentless little siren voice that can unravel the last thread of patience from even the gentlest soul. Mothers, grandmothers, sisters, and older girls settle these small storms as best they can. A cradle is rocked, a tune is hummed, a story is murmured, a bowl is held under a sleepy chin, tiny feet are rubbed warm, hair is loosened from its daytime wrapping. Night reveals how much care lives in repetition. You notice the sounds more now because there are fewer of them. Crickets in warm weather, wind at the walls in cold, a distant dog, the shifting of someone on bedding, the pop of a low fire, a spoon set down, a cough from the corner, a baby's sigh after finally giving into sleep. In a town, perhaps the call of a watchman or late voices in the street, on a plantation, perhaps the far movement of hooves or the uneasy knowledge that even darkness has eyes. Night teaches listening in a different register. Day asks you to hear instructions. Night asks you to hear meaning. This is often when thought turns sharper. During the busiest hours, the mind is pulled outward by immediate tasks. In the evening, reflection arrives whether invited or not. Black women may think over the day's words, a child's fever, a husband's absence, a market rumour, a strange remark from an owner, the look on someone's face, the amount of meal left, the chance of rain, the risk of travel, the new talk of liberty, the old threat of sail, the endless question of what can be endured and what must be quietly prepared against. Thought itself becomes labour. A mainstream fact of the time is that enslaved and free black people alike often used nighttime for their own purposes whenever possible. From social visits to prayer, planning, gardening, and intimate family life, these hours were not empty. They were claimed space, however fragile. This makes night especially important for women, whose days were so often consumed by serving others. Even a brief stretch of evening conversation or private thought could restore something essential. Yet night also heightens vulnerability. Patrols may stop travellers. Unexpected visitors may arrive. Illness can worsen after dark, when help is hardest to find. Pregnant women may go into labour when roads are least safe and midwives most needed. Fires are a constant danger in timber buildings crowded with cloth, straw, and open flame. A strange sound outside can turn the whole room alert. A mother wakes at once. An elder lifts her head. The quiet becomes listening. Safety is never complete, only temporary and carefully managed. Historians still argue over how much genuine leisure black women could experience at day's end because the meaning of leisure itself changes under pressure. Is it leisure to sit while mending because no heavier task is required? Is it rest if you're still listening for danger? Is a conversation among kin restful if it takes place beneath the threat of interruption? The answer may be that rest in 1775 is often partial. Still real, still needed, but partial. A shoulder lowered, a breath released, a child asleep across your lap, a hymn under the breath, small mercies count. A quirky detail of nighttime domestic life lies in how many decisions revolve around the fire. Too little tending, and morning begins in miserable cold. Too much fuel, and scarce wood is wasted. Too much flame, and sparks threaten cloth or wall. Too little, and damp creeps into bedding and bones. Women often become experts at banking coals, reading embers, and stretching warmth through the dark. There is something almost symbolic in this. So much of life requires exactly that skill. Keeping a necessary heat alive without letting it consume what little you have. Evening meals, where possible, can carry a mood different from the morning's rush. Food may still be plain, but the pace is slower. Cornmeal, greens, broth, rice, scraps of meat or fish, perhaps a roasted root, perhaps not much. The smell of warm food in a dim room feels larger than the meal itself. Hunger sharpens gratitude without making it sentimental. People eat because they are tired, because they must rise again, because children need settling, because warm food in the stomach helps the body face the night. Yet even here there can be humour, comment, memory. Someone says the broth is thin enough to float a prayer in. Someone else points out that at least the prayer might improve the flavour. Laughter at night feels different. Softer, closer, more loyal. Black women often create that atmosphere despite everything pressing against it. They know how to smooth the room after strain. A word here, a look there, a story that distracts a frightened child, a practical joke remembered, a bit of singing, a reminder to wash hands, a warning to keep tomorrow's plans quiet. They are emotional arrangers as much as household arrangers, and evening reveals that skill plainly. Without it, fatigue might turn every room sour. Touch becomes gentler now. A child carried half asleep, a blanket drawn higher, a cup placed into another's hands, hair braided for the night, a shoulder pressed lightly in reassurance, salve rubbed into sore wrists, an elder's feet covered. These are simple actions, but they soften the day's harder contacts with tools, buckets, brooms, ropes, rough cloth, and indifferent weather. Evening offers the chance to treat the body not only as an instrument, but as something that has suffered and should be cared for. There are inward reckonings too. Some women pray more openly after others sleep. Some turn over memories of places and people distant in time or geography. Women born in Africa may recall smells, songs, or words from childhood that rise more strongly at night. Women born in the colonies may imagine lives less constrained than the ones around them. Some give thanks, some grieve, some ask questions with no clear answer. Why this child survived, and another did not. Why one household is spared an illness and another taken by it. Why men speak of freedom while guarding bondage. Night does not solve such questions. It merely gives them room to breathe. In many homes, the final acts before sleep are small but meaningful. A prayer spoken over a child, a cloth tucked around embers, a bowl covered, a door checked, shoes placed where they can be found quickly, a precious object hidden, a baby shifted to the warmest place. These rituals produce a sense of order, even if only for a few hours. To prepare the room for night is to insist that tomorrow deserves preparation, that life continues, that the dark is not complete defeat. Some women sleep lightly because they have trained themselves to. One ear remains open to coughing, crying, footsteps, weather, or danger. Mothers in particular often lie as if resting while still listening actively. The body hovers near sleep without trusting it entirely. This is one reason exhaustion in such lives is rarely simple. It is not just tiredness from labour, it is tiredness from vigilance. The nerves work almost as hard as the muscles. And still, dreams come. Sometimes troubled, sometimes kind, sometimes crowded with the day's leftovers, and sometimes offering landscapes wider than waking life allows. Dreams may bring lost loved ones, remembered places, warnings, nonsense, relief, or the plain fact of walking without being called back. However they arrive, they belong for a few hours to the sleeper alone. That private territory has value in a world of constant claims. Scholars continue to disagree about how hope should be described in lives under such pressure. The word can sound too bright if used carelessly, yet hopelessness is not accurate either. Black women in 1775 often carry a practical, guarded hope, not a smooth belief that all will be well, more a stubborn refusal to stop preparing for the possibility that something good might still be made, protected, or reached. Hope lives in hidden coins, in children taught carefully, in gardens tended after dark, in marriages maintained across distance, in songs remembered, in herbs gathered, in plans whispered, in doors watched, in one more morning fire preserved under ash. That is how night ends, not with certainty but with endurance arranged into a kind of order. The room is dim, the air cools or holds its heat. Someone shifts and settles. Someone murmurs once more. Outside, the dark keeps its secrets. Inside, black women lie down with bodies worn by labour and minds still quietly turning. They have carried a day that asks too much, as many days do. They have fed, soothed, watched, mended, measured, and listened. They have guarded family, saved scraps, passed news, and kept some inner part of themselves alive. The world around them remains unstable, often unjust, and never gentle for long. But as night gathers fully and the last visible glow lowers itself into ember red, another truth becomes clear. Tomorrow has not yet arrived, and still these women have made it to this hour with dignity intact in ways the age does not bother to honour. They rest where they can, they hold close whom they can, they sleep if sleep comes, and under the dark roof of 1775, their endurance becomes its own quiet form of light. The night deepens further now, and the room begins to soften around you. The busiest thoughts loosen their grip. The hard edges of the day fade into shadow, then into something even gentler. You can almost hear the fire settling into a low, patient hush, the kind of sound that asks nothing more of anyone. A child breathes slowly nearby. Cloth lies folded for morning. The floorboards cool. Outside, the wind moves with less urgency than before, brushing softly along the walls as though even the weather has grown sleepy. You let the world become smaller. Only this room, only this dim warmth, only the sense of tired hands finally resting. The women of 1775 do not enter easy lives when they close their eyes. Yet even here there is a kind of peace. Not perfect safety, not complete relief, just the simple mercy of stillness after effort, of quiet after noise, of darkness that asks the body to sink and the mind to drift. The worries that pressed so close a little while ago now feel farther away, softened by distance, dimmed by fatigue, blurred at the edges like candlelight seen through half-closed eyes. Breathing grows slower. The room grows softer. Everything begins to settle. And as the night carries its cool hand over the roof, the yard, the path, and the sleeping forms inside, you're left with the hush of endurance, the calm of survival, and the gentle truth that even in a harsh century, people still found moments to rest, to dream, and to let the dark hold them kindly for a little while.